Hello, everyone, and welcome to Club Deck Corner here on Club at 22, the Rangers podcast. I am Scott Carney, and this week I have been joined by the Overlord himself, host of Heart and Hand, David Edgar. David, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you for I love the introductory graphic there. That was very cool. So yeah, nice to be here and always good to get a chance to talk about Rangers.
Yeah, I do try, mate. I do try my hardest
I
with
like
the
that.
art
That was
stuff and
good.
that.
Yeah, I was
I do
impressed with that.
try. Thanks, mate. Stevie said the same, so I'm going to take that as a
There you
compliment,
go.
mate. So,
Yeah,
yes,
well, praise credit where it's due.
thank you, mate.
You should always praise good work, I think.
Thank you. So, is it alien to you being a guest and not a host? Because obviously I host
Um,
quite a
yeah,
lot and
on the yeah, I mean on the site, I'll guest on quite a few shows, so it's actually it's kind of nice to go on the other side of it, but there are shows on Heart and Hand that I do as a guest, but yeah, the kind of main show on Heart and Hand is probably a daily update, and a lot of the time it's just me, so I'm sort of guest and host on that. So this one, at least you're the one who's got the pressure. You're the one who needs to keep the conversation flowing. I can just open my mouth and let my stomach rumble.
Sometimes I think it's the other way around. Sometimes I think the pressure's off being the host. I suppose it depends. It depends who you've got on and what direction they're planning to take things. If you've ever seen one of our
Yeah,
podcasts, mate, and Scotia's on, and Scotia likes a tipple from time to time. Sometimes when he's had a few, I'm like, where is he going? He's literally going down a cul-de-sac, and I'm going to need to try and drag him back from it. But it's all in the spirit of things, I suppose. As you say, I find myself falling into being a host sometimes when we're doing things, especially when we're wrapping up pods and stuff, and I need to say things or give the punters a direction towards something. I find myself doing the job of what the host is already doing. So, and I've tried to
somebody's got to.
try to restrain myself. Before we get into Rangers things, mate. I want to talk a bit about Heart and Hand, and as I said to you just before we start recording, this is the only time I'll try and only be a fanboy, mate. 'Cause it was the same with Stevie as well. I said to him, I don't want to be a pure fanboy, and I act like this is just an interview. But a lot of people that are coming across Heart and Hand, obviously you've been about for how many years? Is it around 11 years? Is that right?
13, 2010.
13 years. So
Yeah,
I've been listening
summer
to you.
2010.
Yeah, I've been listening to you at least 10 and a half, 11 years now.
Thank
I
you.
would say it's been a long time. Back before Patreon and everything like that kicked off, mate. So just briefly, mate, I know it's a long history, but where did Heart and Hand originate? What's the origins of it? Because you're probably one of, if not the kind of trailblazer for podcasting, Rangers podcasting especially. I wouldn't do a podcast if I'd never listened to Heart and Hand, put it that way. And that's probably the last time I'll give you a bit of praise like that, okay?
No, thank you. Basically, it was I'd been throughout the 2000s. I'd been the spokesperson for the Rangers Supporters Trust, which is a very serious role, and very kind of draining a little bit. And by the time I enjoyed it at the time, but by the time I'd given it up, I kind of felt that the way that it had gone within the media, because one of the reasons I wanted to do it was I didn't think Rangers fans were particularly well represented in the media, and I wanted to have a Rangers fan who wouldn't get down on his knees to people that didn't like us, who was quite abrasive, if you like, but was at least representative of who I felt we are, who my mates are. Um, so I'd finished up and I was listening to I had a long commute at the time, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts, which, I'd just not long got into them, a couple of years, because
Mm-hmm.
it was really just beginning to take off. And I was listening to, the kind of Scottish football ones, and I just felt that they weren't representative of conversations that I had with my pals about football. I didn't think that it sounded like the opinion of fans. The only other option for that was things like the Radio Clyde phone in. And again, I don't think that that's particularly representative of the vast majority of Rangers fans that I know. And because of what I do for a living, I do come into contact with an awful lot. So I just thought that there's nobody really listening to us. And one of the things I discovered in the media was that they weren't interested in getting, Rangers fans on to, because they had sort of put us in a box, and they didn't want anybody to come along and say, actually, no, that that's not true. That's your perception of us, and it's unfair, and it's based on a dislike of the club or a dislike of us or your political stance, whatever it was. So yeah, I was listening to a couple of English ones that were really funny. I wasn't a fan of either club, Arsenal and Tottenham, and I'm not a fan. I just thought they were funny. Alan Davis did the Arsenal one, and
Mhm.
Phil Cornwell, the impressionist, he did the Spurs one. So I was saying to my mate, "Listen to these. These are good. You know, I wish somebody would do one like that for Rangers." And he said, "Well, you do it." And I was like, I don't know how." He was like, "Can't be that hard to find out, can it?" And I thought, "No, I suppose not." So I phoned up, and again, this is where I was quite lucky because with the RST stuff, there was a lot of footage of me kicking about on, Sky Sports or the BBC or whatever. So I phoned up the production company that made those two, and I said, "Look, that's my name, David Edgar. I think that I can get an audience. Do you want to, do you guys want to help me do it, basically?" And we're still with them. They do the free shows that we do every week. And that was it. The first one I did went, God, when was it? It was August, I think, 2010. And we were very fortunate. It went to number one on the iTunes chart straight away. Because again, luckily I had this kind of wee bit of profile that I was able to tap into. And it's just kept going from there. We went on to the Patreon in December 2017. That has grown into something that it never was designed to do. I never thought we would be anywhere close to what we've achieved there. So yeah, I was kind of fortunate with the timing of it. I think we did get in early. I think for a lot of people, we are their first podcast. I think it's become a lot more common now, and we were number one in iTunes that first day with 12,000 downloads. That wouldn't touch the sides these days. There's 12,000 podcasts now that there wasn't in 2010. And it's amazing actually just the technology to do it. I mean, the likes of this tonight that you're doing, but also the first couple, the first few years of podcast to edit one, to record, you had to get everyone together for a start off,
Yeah.
and then record on proper mics plugged into proper control desk. Then to edit it took about, the whole process for one 45-minute episode was about 12 hours.
Mm.
And now 12 hours, you can do, you do a lot more than that because the technology has come along with it as well. But it was pretty good ground. And I think that that's one thing when people sort of look at the Patreon and they can kind of get dazzled by the numbers and the finances and stuff. And I always say to them, we didn't just go to that. We were
Yeah.
7 years, nearly 8 years in when we went to that. We had an audience at that stage. So that's always my advice to anybody who's starting a podcast. Don't start a podcast or a video blog or a blog, anything at all. Don't start it because you think, oh, I'd love to be, you know, in inverted commas, a wee bit famous within the Rangers community. I'd love to be,
Yeah.
earning a living from this. That's not the right. Do it because you think you've got a good show to do. Do it because you think you've got something different as well. Because there's so many podcasts out there now that if you're just going to produce, the same as everyone else, well, people have got their favourites now, and it's unlikely that they're going to come across because they've got so many choices now. If you do it and it's a really good show that you like and you've got an audience of 1,000, that is far better than somebody coming along doing a false show, a big advertising campaign, and starting week one with 100,000, because that 100,000 will go. Whereas that
Yeah.
1,000 that like your show, not only will they stay, but they'll tell their friends and they'll give you a listen, and you'll build and you'll build and you'll build. So that's always been our philosophy. Is it good? Do I like it? And I always say to my podcasters, you're working to an audience of two, which is me and you. If we like it, it'll go out. If I don't like it, if you don't like it, it won't go out. Doesn't matter how popular it is. And so far it's worked.
So far, so good. Yeah, so far, so
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that generally, mate, I think that's pretty good. Pretty good advice you could give. We started during COVID because I wanted to talk to my pals again
There you go.
about Rangers, and then I was like, well, I'd done a wee bit of podcasting here and there. I'd appeared on a Heart and Hand. I think I did a show with Jack, the 20 songs one. I'd done that, and
20
then
songs one, yes, you did. Yes. That's
Yeah,
right.
done that, and then I done a wee bit with Gallant Few as well, and then I was like, I kind of fancy doing this myself, and I was being a wee bit egotistical in the terms I thought, well, I think I could host as well, and then the boys that I go to the football with, they didn't really get a choice. I said, lads, I've got an idea, we're going to do
Mm.
this, and you're going to do it with me. And to be fair, we kind of. I think the most terrifying thing was putting something out there and seeing what was going to come back at you at the start.
Mm.
Anyway, now I don't particularly care what people think because you get some mixed reviews to say the least. But
Yeah,
that's
like
that's
you're
that's
always going to get you're always going to get the people that don't like it, and I think that it can be very difficult not to take the if you get 100 nice comments and one bad one, you focus on the one and forget about the
of
100,
course.
and that's just human nature. And there are some people who it's nothing to do with what you're doing; it's just a projection of their own insecurities onto you, and there's nothing you can do about that. And except hope that whatever's missing, they find. So you just have to go on with it. And like I say, if I'm satisfied with it, if it's something that I felt has been good and has been worthwhile, then it's worthwhile. If and I'm not delusional about it, it won't last forever. At one point, people will have had enough, or somebody will come along that's better, and people will move on. And in that case, you go, do you know what? I had a really good run at it. There's no point. But I think that once you start getting into right, what do we do to get listeners? Right,
Yeah.
what I think then it moves away from what it is, and it's supposed to be about people. People listen to Heartland because they like us, the people who make the shows. That's why they listen. They don't listen because of, fancy tricks or whatever. But no, and it's been really good to see. And the vast majority of Rangers fan media, one of the things I'm really proud of about Rangers fan media and Rangers supporters in general is that there is a lot of support for each other and for people who are doing it within the community. You'll always get a few, people who like to just be contrary for the sake of it and like to be nasty,
Mhm.
particularly in
Yeah.
social media. But you ignore them and you move on. But I do like the fact that the vast majority of Rangers podcasts, blogs, videos, whatever, they all get on and nobody's kind of saying that, well, I do this so nobody else can. Doesn't work like that. If your show's good, you'll get an audience. If your show isn't
Yeah.
any good, doesn't matter if there's one more podcast out there or 1,000, people will only watch it. So long
Yeah.
as you stay within those parameters, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's the way I still look at it as well. And until if I lose the love for it, then I'll stop doing it.
Yeah, if
Ultimately,
it's not fun, absolutely. If it's not fun, wrap
that's
it.
the way I look at it. If I'm not enjoying doing it anymore, and I think the bit that blew my mind the most, and I'm probably still not used to it, is people coming up to you and saying, "You're that guy from that podcast, aren't you? Or you're that guy
Yeah,
from YouTube?" And I'm like, "Am I? I
yeah.
don't
You
know."
never, you never
You
ever.
never get used to that.
I still don't get used to it. And to be honest, I don't do a lot of videos. To be honest, I was saying to somebody
Yeah,
yesterday that I have to be drag kicked because look. It is not my medium. It's fair to say, I don't think unless somebody was kind of after somebody who looked like a shaved peach. But no, I'm kind of it's nice, vast majority of people because I remember when I was at the trust and I'd maybe said something controversial, people would come up to you, call you everything under the sun. So if people want to come up and say, "Oh, I listen to your show," that's you're brilliant. Thank you
yes,
for that.
yeah.
That's a lot nicer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely much nicer. But yeah, it's one of those weird things when people say it to you. I'm like, I can't really get used to that. I can't really get used to that. But I mean, it's lovely. It's lovely when it happens. It really is. Right. Anyway, mate, we'll move on. Are you missing Rangers yet?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I I'd make the close season a fortnight if it was up to me. But yeah, I think as well. I'm a football fan first and foremost. I watch a lot of football, and I miss it. I miss the excitement of it. The games. There's nothing quite like it. It's a wee bit of a sort of phony war in the summer, and you've got the transfer stuff to tide you over, and it's exciting to a degree. But no, I'm itching for it. I want to get back to Ibrox. I want to get back, watching as I want match of the day back on a Saturday night. All of that. Yeah, particularly bad in a summer where there's no tournament as well, because that at least I'm not a huge international football fan, but at least it's something. So I roll on the Newcastle game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to it as well, mate. I really am. It's you almost need a focal point, and it's the same pretty much every summer. I'm not the I don't watch a lot of football in terms of like what you would probably watch. I'll watch the odd game from time to time, but I've always said on this pod I'm a bit of an arrogant football fan, and in terms that I tend to only really watch Rangers games, and then I'll watch big games in inverted commas if you like after that.
Mm.
But I've got a curse on big games because anytime it's going to be a big game and there's hype around it, I'll watch it and it'll be one of the worst games you'll ever watch.
That'll be
So,
rubbish.
uh,
But that, I mean, that,
yeah,
that that does happen a lot. And sometimes, the least likely games that people might look at and go, "Oh, that'll be rubbish." It's actually fantastic. But it's just it's a strange. I don't actually watch a lot of television in general. I, apart from sport, that tends to be. I'll watch, a fair bit of football, and I've got 3 or 4 programs I watch on a loop, but I don't really watch a lot of TV other than sort of documentaries and stuff. So yeah, I'm missing it, and in the kind of summer months, usually you'd get to about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and there'll be a really good game on, and it's not there at the moment. So the old joke, isn't it? You need to spend time with the wife at this point of the year. Um, find out
this
what
is
they
where
do
you
for.
build up all the brownie points, isn't it, for
I
the rest of the
It's
year?
kind of
Yeah,
find out what she does for a living and stuff. So it's been quite interesting. Oh right, is
yeah,
that what you? Who are you and what do you do? I felt a bit like King Charles.
yeah. The last time we spoke, actually, you come on and done the charity. Last time we spoke on the pod,
That's
even you
right.
come on and
Yes, well
I
done
did
on that.
the charity pod. Thanks, mate. And we mentioned Seville at that point, and I was
Yeah,
like, oh, obviously, I don't think I can go because the missus was pregnant, and I was like, right. And then obviously we've just announced the friendly in Germany at the end of the summer
Hoffenheim. Yeah.
or the end of July. So I just kind of looked at the missus when I seen that. I said, I'm going to Germany for a couple of nights. She just kind of looked and she was like, you didn't get to Seville. And I was like, no, I didn't get to Seville. You are
No, that's
correct.
it. That's true. You should
Yeah.
be able to. You should be
So
able
we are
to
a few
claim
of
that.
us.
No, that's
A
fair.
few of us are going for a wee away trip. A wee lad, me and two of the other podders are going. So I'm looking forward to that. So, but she was, yeah, it was one of those through gritty teeth of yes, you can go
Oh,
because I
I,
can
I, I mean,
understand. But yeah,
aye. And she knows why you're going.
I'm doing all the legwork now, mate. So it's all fine. I'm doing all the
Quite
legwork
right.
now.
Quite right.
So you were recently just on your travels, mate. You were in NARSA. What was NARSA like for people that don't know? It's the North American Rangers Association. Is that correct?
Yeah, Supporters Association. Yeah,
Sports
basically
Association.
what it is every year, the North American, that's the US and Canada, they have a convention where representatives of all the clubs go. They'll have their AGM for the organisation and whatnot, and they have a series of events, and it's a fundraiser as well for the
Hmm.
organisation. And they'll bring out a number of ex-players. Will come across, and every year they get someone to host. And fortunately, for me anyway, the last two, and I'd done one in Calgary in 2018, and I was supposed to do San Francisco in 2020, but obviously COVID had other ideas.
COVID.
So I did Vegas last year for them, and Toronto this year, and it's great. It's tremendous fun if you're thinking about going away on a holiday to one of these cities. Next year, for example, it's New York, which will be
Hmm.
different class, because they set up a lot of events and excursions, and there'll be trips where you can go and sightseeing organised. And this year, for example, in Toronto, there was the golf day, there was a brewery tour, there were local sightseeing events. There's guides, and then at night you come in and there's Rangers events, there's ex players to meet, spend a bit of time with, a big gala ball on the Saturday night, big gala dinner, the Walter Smith Memorial Gala dinner.
Yep.
And last year in Vegas was the first year that they had named it. It was the first year since Walter had passed. And they brought out Ethel Smith and Liz Smith, Walter's sister. Ethel's obviously his wife. And that was very special as well to be able to spend a bit of time with them and speak about them. And the stories were just incredible. So yeah, if anyone is thinking about next year, you're planning a holiday, Vegas was nuts. I mean, there were like 2,000 Rangers
Yeah, I can
supporters there.
imagine Vegas.
It
Yeah,
was wild. Just everywhere you looked, there was red, white, and blue.
yeah,
It was an incredible few days. Toronto was a bit smaller, but still great because the expat expat community in the Toronto area is massive anyway. And then, as I say, next year New York, which will be pretty cool. To tell you how much fun it is, Andy Gray was over this year. Andy's been at the last two actually. He was at Vegas as well, and he was already starting his campaign to get back for New York next year. He was
Wow.
already kind of saying to the organisers, "You've got to have me." Now, remember, Andy Gray's got a pretty cool life where he lives
Yes.
and what he does
Yeah.
for a living, right? He basically
Yeah.
plays golf and hangs about with Ruud Hullet watching football. So if he wants to go, it must be fun.
It's certainly on my bucket list. That's for
Oh,
sure. It's certainly on
it's
my bucket list
fantastic,
to do it.
and you get to meet these guys as well that are expats, and it's a lot of fun. Hearing their stories and whatnot. But the other thing about it, it makes you realise how special this club is because you've got people coming from, you know, place you've never heard of in the US, and they go, "Oh, we've got a club there," and you think, "My God, they've got a club
Yeah.
there." You know,
Yeah.
that get together to watch Rangers games 4,000 miles away from Ibrox, and also it makes you kind of quite grateful that you can go because it's maybe something that I take for granted when I'm here. Is that Ibrox is just up the road? You know, I can
Yeah.
literally hop on the train. I'll be at Ibrox in 35 minutes. Um, and you realise just how special it is for guys who aren't. So yeah, wonderful. Definitely, as a bucket list thing, I would highly recommend anyone who's thinking about it to go. And the good thing is it's 3, 4, 5 days at most. But you can go for just the weekend, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you can then have a holiday either side of that
Yeah.
and get to
Yeah.
do. So you can take the family, and still there'll be plenty of things for them to do in whatever host city we're in.
I'd imagine New York will be quite a popular one because of it is New
Yeah,
York at
well,
the end of the day.
it
It
will.
is New York.
It'll
So I
do.
do
It'll either, if it doesn't quite beat Vegas, which was the biggest one ever, it'll be close,
be close. Yeah.
because of the kind of, 'cause it's New York, isn't it? Most famous city in the world. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Even as you were mentioning, you were saying about how it's all worldwide. That's one thing that we're worldwide as a club and how big the club actually is and how many people around the world support us and still watches. We actually have a son and a father that tunes in to watch us at 6:30. One stays at America and one stays in the UK, and
See,
they watch it
they watch
together
together.
because it's the only time that they can do it together.
That's
And I'm like, that's just mental, man.
it's
That's stuff like that
incredible, isn't
blows
it?
your mind. It does.
Oh,
Um,
and even I remember like when we won the title, and my phone was pinging, and it was people that I know through Rangers and have built friendships with in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America, South
yeah,
America. And you just felt, wow, I'm part of this thing that's bigger than me, is bigger than, all of us really. It's all of us
hmm
combined. And that I think is part of the joy of being a football fan in the first place, is that sense of community and that sense of belonging to something that's a bit bigger than yourself. So it's remarkable when you think about it, and not to get too misty eyed, although it's difficult not to, when you think that this started with four teenagers
yeah,
getting together because they wanted to play this new sport of theirs, and now look at it, the
yeah.
history, everything that it's done, and where it is today. I think is just it's honestly one of the most incredible stories in sporting history as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I could not agree more, mate. I could not agree more. Hence why I now do a Rangers podcast. It's life
Absolutely.
for us all, mate. It's life
That's
for
it.
us all. We'll move on to the actual football of recent times. A wee bit about last season, slightly, mate. And the only reason I'm asking you about that is because obviously you're a media partner with the club. You are no, I
There's
don't.
no such thing now. That I hear that
Oh,
a lot. No, they stopped that. That was only for one season.
all right,
That
okay.
Rangers had
Is
that
that
policy. We are now an official commercial partner. We do a
commercial
lot of
partner?
sponsorship with them,
I,
but they
I
don't
went.
they don't do
I,
media partners now.
I went to say commercial first. I thought I don't think that's quite
No,
right.
no, you're right.
But
Basically, Rangers had that thing for 1 year,
yeah,
and the media still try to use it as a stick to beat them with, but it
right,
doesn't
okay,
exist. Hasn't existed for 3 years now. So,
right.
but no, we're just a commercial partner. We sponsor this year. We'll sponsor a player in the men and women's team. We'll take the LED advertising. We're going to sponsor a match in the January 2nd match we're actually going to sponsor, and probably another one before the end of the season, plus another couple of things as well. So
Magic.
yeah, all we do now is give them money. But that's which is exactly how the club like it.
Yes, I can imagine.
That's favourite type of relationship.
Yes, that's kind of part of my dream as well. I feel like we're kind of getting stuck on the podcast, each other's podcast, but that's kind of my dream as well, is to be able to put money back into the club, and I have done. Do you know what I mean? We've run giveaways and that for tops and things like that. No matter what, it's still me giving
Everybody
something to the
who's
club,
watching
and
this does.
do
Everybody
you know what
who's
I mean? It's
watching this does. It
it's
doesn't
what I
matter
want.
exactly, but it doesn't matter how much, right? Because it's just based on if you're fortunate. I'm fortunate because of the type of business that I have. I'm fortunate to have it in the first place, and I'm fortunate that it provides funds that can then be put back into Rangers. But if you buy a strip, or if you buy a match ticket or a season ticket or whatever, you're contributing to Rangers, and
Yeah.
everybody. It doesn't matter from a pound to whatever. It doesn't matter because it really does all add up.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. Right. Anyway, so as I say, we'll get back to actual talking about Rangers, mate. I'll always go off and a wee bit of tangent. So last season, mate, we're not going to do a full breakdown of that, mate. I'm not going to keep you all night. Don't worry about that. But obviously, looking back at it,
Don't think
we
anybody
were
wants to relive that, really, do we?
no,
No,
probably
not
not. But we were
particularly.
we were right. Well, I think we were rightfully looking. We were slightly optimistic about going into the new season. Obviously, we came back off a European final. We'd won the cup. We were thinking, okay, the summer signings at first, at initial glance, were okay. I still
Mm.
think there wasn't enough out the way, but the ones that came in, you were like, okay, we'd liked what we'd seen. Then we hit pre-season. There was probably warning signs throughout pre-seasons. So even at that, though, mate, even at the warning signs that we did see, did you think that this season would have went anything the way that it did?
No, I didn't. But it's one of those things that, with hindsight, you can see.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's the team, and I use that term rather than club, but the team had run its race, and the last hurrah of that was the Ville in the Scottish Cup final. Um, but again, you can only really tell with time. The club had made bad decisions for a few seasons with regards to things like windows and uh, transfers in and out, in particular, that had then caught up in the summer. We had so much to rectify that we didn't maybe realise, because you've just reached a European final, so can't be that wrong. But it was just a kind of a confluence of things where you had, players coming out of contract, key players coming out of contract. We'd had this 65 game season. The medical team had changed and wasn't up to it. As we've now seen, Mark Waller's returned because the
Yeah.
manager and the club feel that way as well. Also, I think that there's a tendency after an epic season like that, and it was, as I say, 65 games and European run, that you don't really take into account how much it takes out of the squad emotionally. I think that final in particular had taken a lot out of them emotionally. So when it went very wrong very quickly. And I think then that right from the Michael Beale appointment, and it was, let's get him in. He's the guy that they wanted. Let's hope that he can kind of turn the season around. If we win things as well, that even better. But I think there was an understanding that when Beale came in, that he was working with what he had until the summer, and then there would need to be massive surgery. And the fact that we've seen that surgery on and off the park, it hasn't just been on the park. Rangers had become stale
Mm-hmm.
on and off the park. Rangers had become stale. You can get, when you've been somewhere for a long time, you can get very, well, this is how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of, your mind isn't open to saying, well, maybe we should do it like this. And I think that's what had happened at Rangers. And we had the same faces that had been playing, a lot of stalwart players in there, don't get me wrong. I just think the whole thing had gone a little bit stale. I think that you had players who felt, well, I've kind of done everything here now that I wanted to do. Um, And last season, it was a slog. It felt like a slog. It looked like a
Mm.
slog for the players. It was certainly a slog for the fans. It just wasn't particularly enjoyable because there wasn't that sense, I think, of purpose. And again, a lot of this is it's very difficult to sit and see all of this stuff at the time because you don't know, you don't have the evidence in front of you. I think there's this thing in with football fans in particular that we like to say something and then stick to it. Whereas I'm a great believer in the evidence is going to change, because we've
Mhm.
got 20 matches ahead of us. And quite understandably, after 20 matches, I'll be in a much better position to tell you than I am right now.
Mm.
So people will kind of say to you, well, but why didn't we see this last year? Because we couldn't know. We're fans, we're sitting on the outside looking in. You don't know things like relationships between players. You don't know players' motivation. You don't know what's in their mind. Are they thinking, right, I'm going to give this 100%, or because they're going to tell you that, in the interviews
Yeah.
that you see, of course they're going to say, or are they actually talking to their agent about their next move, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a very disappointing campaign. I actually think it was quite a strange campaign because Rangers ended up with a points tally that under normal circumstances is massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive. Now, a part of that is that the league isn't particularly strong out with us in that lot, but I still think that Beale deserves a bit of praise because it's all right. One of the things I heard a lot of people say when we couldn't beat Celtic was, "Oh, it's all right beating the rest of those teams, but we should be." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, we should be, but we weren't." That was the problem. The whole of Gio's
Mhm.
reign, our away form was 50%. That's 50% points away from home under Gio. Um, so you're right. We should be beating these teams, but we weren't. And Beale corrected that. Where he hit the buffers was that the team he had wasn't good enough to beat the team they had,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I think there was a realization that we're not one or two players away here. Um, yes, I think both teams are quite evenly matched, but in the key areas up front, they were much better than us, unfortunately. They had 4 or 5 players that would start for us, is the
Yeah.
honest answer. And that was the difference. In tight matches last season, they won by 1 goal several times because we didn't have the firepower that they did. Now, we had the firepower to beat these other sides, not as convincingly as I think we should have done. I think there was a lot of games that were tight that shouldn't have been. And again, that drains you. If there are games that you're winning 3-2, right, or 2-1, that are live right up into the final whistle, that that takes more out of a side than if we go 3-0 up inside an hour. And you can just play and the players can almost conserve energy. And that helps. It helped them last season, and we didn't do it enough. Which is why I think he's targeting so many front players this year. Because I think the feeling, understandably, is defensively we need to improve. I think a goalkeeper is a big part of that. I think a goalkeeper will. I think you saw it with Robbie McCrory, in fact, even when he came in last year.
Mhm.
But I think we're fine box to box. I think we're as good as anyone there up front. That's where we've been,
Yeah.
and that's where last season we had this patchwork of a forward line didn't work, and I'm glad to see that we're rectifying it.
Yeah, I think even the staleness within the team that you mentioned before, but I think that also stems from the 55 season as well, because you still have players around, and so much emphasis was put on winning that, and rightly so. I mean, but it was imperative for us to get there. We had to do it when we did it, and then obviously it ran through, and then we had an incredible European run, a European run that I will literally never forget. Gave me some of the best nights of my entire life.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, and I'll never forget it. And but after it, I suppose it is natural that there's going to be some form of emotional damage to that because
It was a
we were
come
so
down.
close, but so
That's what
far
it
away.
was.
Yeah,
Last year
and
was
that that
last
that
year was a come down.
that didn't help Gio going into this season. Even though
No.
I do think Gio, to me, just kind of lost his way. I do. I don't know if it was. I just didn't have the belief in him, and I really wanted to. He's a lovely guy, literally a lovely lad, but I wanted to have the belief in him, and I didn't. I really didn't, and I think that
Mm.
was all that stemmed together to something that was probably never going to be a success.
No, and look, I think that and it's amazing when you think about it that Gio was a couple of kicks of the ball away from arguably our greatest ever achievement, and he would have
I
been
know.
immortal. But people have different skills, and I think that Gio's skill was amply demonstrated in that European run. He was brilliant at setting us up tactically and changing within a game. Where I don't think his style of football suits is a team who play packed defences domestically all
Yeah,
the time, and packed defences that are running about at 110 miles an hour every week. So it's just it's a skill set thing rather than a lack of talent. It's just that he's stronger in areas that maybe we need to be stronger in certain other ones. So no, look, I could see why he was appointed at the time. It made a lot of sense after the shock really of losing Gerrard mid-season. And as you say, you can't in any way say it was a disaster because we won a trophy under him, and we had that amazing, unforgettable, live with us forever European run. But I think that we did need to make the change when we did, and now I think that if you want to make a defence of I don't think he was backed particularly well
yeah,
in the
probably.
transfer
Yeah,
windows he was here. No, I don't. I think that the one he had in January was a disaster, an unmitigated disaster, really. I think I never got the impression that the players that Gio got were the ones he wanted. Now he's more used to that idea that the club buys the players and the manager just gets on with it, but it didn't work. And it was quite clear that there were players that were brought in that he just didn't fancy. I think
yeah,
Diallo being a really good, because Diallo's a good player. He's proved it again, last season at
yeah,
Sunderland. Diallo's a good player, but Gio just didn't pick him. Um, so yeah, I think that um, no matter how the season goes next year, and it could be a disaster. Let's be honest. It could be brilliant. It could be average. We don't know, right? As we're sitting here just now. But regardless, Beale's been able to do what he wants to do this summer. So
yeah.
it's kind of like, on the one hand, for him, that means no excuses, right? But on the other
Hmm.
hand, he's got a freedom to bring in guys that he wants to deal with. It is going to be his squad next year. Um, and that is maybe something that Gio didn't get to do.
Yeah, that probably just nicely on to mate the recruitment that we have seen this summer. Obviously, we could go into all sorts of depth. Maybe we'd be here for hours if we discussed the board reshuffling, all the changes that we've seen within the club, the changes that I feel were right to happen. They were overdue to happen, and I think we're heading in the right direction now. So in terms of the new signings, and quickly first, were you happy enough with Beale when Beale was the rumoured man, and it looked
Mm.
like he was the target for Rangers? Were you like, yeah, I'm more than up for that? Because uh, even within our pod, mate, there was mixed feelings about Beale being appointed.
Yeah, I understand that. I think given his lack of experience as a manager, I tend to kind of be more on talent. Does he have the ability to be the manager?
Yeah,
Um, is he good? And it just speaking to people, um, speaking to people who'd worked with him at the club, and the feedback you were getting was, no, he's really good. Really brilliant, and full of respect for him. And he's tougher than people think. I think there's this perception. I think that the manager is a disciplinarian and the coaching staff are the players' mates. And certainly Gerrard was, there was a distance between, and not a bad way, by the way. You need it. Walter had it as well.
hmm
He wasn't the player's mate. I don't mean he was unapproachable that the players couldn't go, but
yeah,
he is the gaffer, right? There was
yes,
that, but they were like that as well with Beale, whereas it was McAllister and Milsom and Culshaw that were the guys that would be the, laughing, joking, arm around the shoulder.
yeah, yeah,
So I think there's that. I think he's done enough in the time he's been here to show promise. It's no more than that at this point because it means nothing until you're delivering big silver things into our arms. We know that.
hmm
He had some tough times. He really did. He made some mistakes as well. It wasn't all just bad luck. The League Cup final, his selection was wrong. He got the
yeah,
the team and the tactics wrong that day. But
agreed.
I think the fact that you immediately saw a change there was he learned. He thought, right, okay, I've made errors there. And he immediately, sort of learned. So I get where people are coming from or came from, because I do think the vast majority of fans are happy with him now.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
he could manage his interviews a little bit differently for me. But
Instead of going, look, I'm holding two aces, by the way, just in case you wanted to see them.
it's just enthusiasm. He just, do you know what it is?
I
He
know
loves football. He loves his
he
job.
does.
And
Yeah.
that's something to remember about Michael Beale. This is his dream job. He wants to be the Rangers manager. He loves where he lives. His kids love where he lives. He loves the club. This is it for him. This is the one that he was striving for really at QPR,
Hmm.
as we saw. He turning down that invitation from Wolves, and then really running up the road when the opportunity arose.
Yeah.
So I think that's all it is. These interviews, for me, I come from the kind of Church of Walter,
Yeah.
which is just go and watch videos of how Walter did it, and that's how everything
Yeah.
at Rangers should be done. So
Yeah,
I
I'm the
admit
same, mate.
that,
Yeah.
but then younger fans that I know, this is our generation. Younger fans that I know love it, and this is maybe just me having to get used to things are different to when I was a kid, which is fair enough. But I think that most fans do back him. The one thing I felt at the time, same with Gio, is that there's and you also see it a little bit with transfers. There is a reluctance from some fans to accept the reality of where we are, and I think that because of that, there's maybe sometimes people think that we might be operating in different markets to the one that we're operating in.
Yes.
We are held back hugely by our league. It's that simple. People know Rangers are a massive club. They really do. And they look at it and they go, wow, 50,000. And then they look a bit deeper and they go, I don't want to play Motherwell 4 times a year. I don't want, I don't want to play Aberdeen 6 times a year. Uh, and that hurts us a lot. It really,
Yeah.
really does. It hurts us a lot.
Or play in a league that splits at the end of it for no good
For
reason,
no
really, at all.
apparent reason. No, and
Yeah.
and listen, we get fed up with it.
Yeah,
See by about
exactly.
April, and for fucking Hibs again.
I know.
We're like that. Even
Yeah,
Kilmarnock. How many fucking Kilmarnock matches have I had to watch in my lifetime?
I
That
know.
more than any human being should be forced to.
Agreed.
So I get that, but we kind of forget it when it comes to, like, Tillman's a case in point. Tillman
Mm,
loved the club, really, really liked the manager, got on great with him, really liked the fans, felt valued, didn't want to play in Scotland anymore. That simple. And it is difficult for us when we are up the road from a league that is non-stop glamour 24/7.
yeah, yeah. That's the hardest part, mate. It is. It's always the problem. As I said, when transfer season comes round as well, you'll see the rumours on Twitter. You'll see some people pass opinions of, oh, we should be looking into this guy or that guy, whoever. And I'm like, he's not going to come here and play football. It just isn't going to
No.
happen. And I would love to think that it would happen. Again, mate, we're going harping back to times when we were growing up and we seen some of the players coming to play for our team. Obviously, there's circumstances and all that behind that, but some of the players that we've seen play for the club, and you just have to move with the times because of what the English league has become. It's just become
Mm.
this.
That's
It's
it.
like a
Telly,
separate entity on its own. It's just it's
when you've
bonkers
got
football.
clubs like Brighton, and they've brilliantly run, right? But when you've got clubs like Brighton and Bournemouth with 11,000 fans, that's what the stadium holds, 11,000 fans,
Mm-hmm.
that can easily go out in the summer and spend 40, 50 million pounds and
It's just
accompanying wages. And I think that sometimes that we do forget that the ball is kind of on the slates for us a wee bit when it comes to that. We just cannot match these finances. And I think a case in point, one of the reasons why I'm actually quite excited about Jack Butland coming in is that he was getting offers to be the third choice, never play, right? Never. Uh,
no.
be on the bench only if the sub keeper is injured or needs to get used, right?
The Andy Firth of Rangers, basically, is
Yeah,
what he was getting offered.
he was getting offered 60 grand a week to do that. £3 million. Now, nobody in Scotland earns £60,000 a week. Nobody at
No.
Rangers. Nobody at Rangers Celtic earns within, the most highest paid player I think Scotland will be touching 40, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you meant to do?
I know.
If the fact is, and the other thing is, people say, well, why would you want to come to Rangers rather than to Bournemouth, right? And I get that, 50,000, all this history. But if you were growing up in Africa or a European country, Rangers don't really mean anything to you other than a vague name, And the other thing as well that I hear people say is, well, it's a chance to come here and win medals. Well, see if a club in England were coming in for me, or a team in Cyprus, and the team in Cyprus said, but you could win the league. I didn't grow up dreaming of winning the Cypriot League. It's not something that's going to be...
Yeah.
Now, it's massive to us, but I think we forget that it might not be massive to other people. That doesn't mean that you can't be ambitious and that you shouldn't, but I just think that for a lot of us my age who grew up in the night when we could compete up until about 95 with anybody, it is tough to take, but Sky Money has ruined the dynamic and it's unfair because it is now shit. I think that's why a lot of people like us and maybe watching this and all in Europe, by the way, just and even in England that aren't Premier League fans are pissing ourselves at this Saudi Arabia thing because it's, get it right up you. Now you know how the rest of us feel. Somebody comes along and spends and I'm loving hearing all their kind of pundits going, why would he go to Saudi Arabia? Same reason that he went to Bournemouth in the first fucking place, mate, because they offered him tons and tons of money. And
exactly.
So I'm really enjoying that. But unfortunately, the English League have done that to the rest of Europe in particular.
This Saudi thing's crazy, though, isn't it? This is just...
wild.
It is wild. It really is. Anyway, that's probably a separate podcast in itself. But it's bonkers. But it's a good way of looking at it. England are probably looking at it going, hang on, you're stealing all my toys. Well,
they are.
Still everybody else.
No, this is unfair. Why do people want to go and play in Saudi Arabia? And then I'm like, and I keep picking on them, but do you think people really wanted to go and play for Burnley? Like French internationals and stuff. They don't. They go there because it's a shit ton of money. And, can you blame if you're player A and they say to you, come to this club and earn $2 million a year, right? Which a phenomenal wage, right? And don't get me wrong. But $2 million a year taxed, or go to Saudi Arabia for 2 years, earn $10 million a year untaxed. You go and you do your 2 year. And you treat it like you or I would if we had a job abroad where you're just Xing the days on the calendar until you get back. You go and do it and you're set up forever.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Anyway, we'll get back to Rangers, mate, quickly before I let you get out here. I want to talk about the signings that have came in so far and your thoughts on them all so far. I think the recruitment is exciting. I think that the players that we're attracting are a different calibre of what we've been used to previously. I'm glad that Beale seems to be getting towards his first choices, if not his first choice that he wants for that particular position. And it looks even more so as with Dessers now. That looks like that's pretty much going to happen as well. A wee plug for you. I heard that on your daily update today, mate, when I was on my way home from work today. But yeah, it is an exciting time. I think people are getting a wee bit disappointed. Even like this, again, it harks back to where we play football. People like Seamer's only a loan. I'm like, well, aye, he is. Of course, he's only a loan. Like, we're not always going to be able to sign every single player that we're going to be linked with. But anyway, out of the people that we have recruited so far, mate, and as I say, Dessers, you could probably include into that because it does look like a sure thing now. Who you most looking forward to seeing?
Top and bottom. The Dessers, number 9, Butland, the goalkeeper. 2 areas that we were poorly served in last season. I feel, and I know that people might say, well, Cholak had that great start, which he did, but it sort of dried up, and then he had his issues with injury. Morelos was a ghost of the guy that we'd seen a few seasons before. So having a top number 9 that can contribute, get involved in the gameplay, because I do think that's the area. When it comes to finishing, if you had to pick somebody put a chance away to save your life, you pick Cholak. But I think the way that modern football is and the way that Michael Beale wants to play, you need to have that combination. And let's face it, we're all excited to be a striker, aren't we? It's the reason we watch football, put the ball in the
Yeah,
back of the net. So very
exactly.
excited about him. And Jack Butland, because without wanting to dwell on Alan McGregor, who is deservedly a Hall of Fame, a Rangers legend. And for me, I've said this before, I think Gorham was the best I've ever seen, because 92-93, I legitimately think Gorham was the best goalie in the world. And I don't think you could say McGregor was ever the best goalie in the world. But for longevity and achievement, Alan McGregor, I think, is the greatest Rangers goalkeeper, if that makes sense. But last year, I think it was already a season too far. Last year
Yeah.
was very much. And a big part of it is he wouldn't come off his line. Now, that meant that we were getting into situations that you don't get into if you've got a goalkeeper who does, right? That a lot of chances or mistakes that were coming, they were coming off the back of situations that shouldn't have developed in the first place, right? Because there's so many, if a goalie just came out and took it, but what happened to us is McGregor won't come out. So a defender gets in and he nods it away. Right. Well, straight away you've got, well, he could misplace a header. That happens sometimes. It can be picked up by a forward running in. That happened. And you've got extra defending to do that you wouldn't have had. And I think when Robbie McCrory came into the side, we all noticed that, didn't we? And I remember thinking after a couple of games, he's not had a lot to do. And then I realised why he hadn't had a lot to do.
Yeah.
And then when we played Hearts, you saw at the end of the season, the throw into the box, chaos. And I thought, so Butland, I think, will make an enormous difference. But Dessers is one that you've got to be. I am quite excited about Seema because he's a very good player, and I think he could absolutely do. He could be special for us. I'm not too unduly worried about a loan because Tillman was a loan to buy. He didn't stay. Ryan Kent was just a loan. He stayed here 5 years. So what does it mean? And see if
Positive
Seema
thinking.
comes.
Yeah.
Well, see if Seema comes and he scores 15 goals and we win the league and he leaves the day after the season's finished. He's been a great signing.
I couldn't agree more. That's the way I look at it as well. If he's wanting here as well to try and prove a point in order to his parent club to see that he's got enough to cut it where he is, then he can prove himself up here as long as we win the league and scores
And
goals.
you can't get a right now in football. I don't think there's a better recommendation than the fact that Brighton wanted to sign you. I really don't. I think right now, in terms of talent spotting, they are, reinventing the wheel. So the fact that they even looked at him and went player, and the fact that they didn't, even the fact that they said, no, we're just going to hold on to him just now, gets me excited. Doesn't mean he'll be a success. Of course it doesn't. But, again, I go back to that thing I said earlier. Do they have ability? Right.
Yeah.
Then that's where it's up to the manager. The manager needs to unlock it. The manager needs to work out a system for him. The manager needs to motivate him and get, is he an arm round him guy? Does he need a kick at the butt? Whatever. But you can do all that. That's your job. What you can't do, I think, is, inject talent into somebody who doesn't have it. So Seema, excited by him.
Yeah, Seamer's probably one for me that I'm looking forward to seeing, and it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the window goes. As I say, but obviously we've still got. I would imagine we're trying to get people to leave or trying to find suitable players.
Yeah.
We're definitely looking for to offload some players. So it's still an interesting window ahead, that's for sure. But it's not far away now until the football starts. So what's your thoughts going into next season? League is obviously a priority. I know that it's that goes without saying. But do you expect a radical change in maybe the way that we've seen formations over the last few years? I think Beale's got a lot of ideas up his sleeve.
Not a radical change. I think more often than not, you'll see us play the kind of 4-2-3-1 that we've done. I think there might be other games where it's a more attacking midfield. I think that he does, though, have the opportunity. If you look at the type of players he's buying, I think he does have the opportunity to play a 3 at the back, which means getting the 2 up front as well.
Yeah.
So I think we will see a bit of tactical flexibility. There were games last season we saw where he dropped Lundstrom in, and we went with a 3 because he felt it gave us a wee bit more presence up front. So I do think we'll see that. I just think that I want to see. Last year, I kind of felt that the Michael Beale team we saw was not his team yet with plasters on, if that makes sense. I think you saw with the signings of Campbell and Raskin what he was wanting from his players.
Yeah.
And I think that these guys arriving, you're hoping will continue that. I'm an optimist. Every summer, I think we're going to win everything. League, treble, Eurovision
Champions
Song
League.
Contest. You name it. The
Yeah,
Ashes. Every summer, I think that, and I'll stick to it up until it becomes clear that we won't. So no, and look, I'm a Rangers fan. I expect to win the league. I don't care what it's been like for the last 10 years. I expect to win the league. That'll never change. So that is the target. I think it'll be close. I do. I think that it'll be whoever wins it, us or them, it'll be close. I don't think anyone's going
yeah,
to run away with it or
I
steamroller
agree.
it. Because I suspect both sides of the old firm will beat the opposition a lot, and it might come down to those 4 matches.
Yeah, but it's an exciting time. It is an exciting time going into
Absolutely.
next season, and I'm very much looking forward to it. David, that's been a very quick hour, mate, and I cannot thank you enough for coming on the pod to have a chat, mate. We went off in different directions, mate, but that's just how I like it. So,
The point of it.
honestly, mate, I really appreciate coming on, mate. I do.
No problem. Thank you for asking me, and hello to all the viewers, and thank you for staying to this length of a show that I'm on. I appreciate it.
I'm sure they will, mate. I'm sure they will. And yeah, if you don't, I know you know where Heart and Hand is, everybody. But if you don't, it's Heart and Hand everywhere. They've got a Patreon. We'll obviously go sign up for it. I am a patron myself. I pay for Heart and
Thank
Hand, so
you.
there you go. No problem, mate. I have done, as I say, it's been over 10 years, mate. I've been listening to your dulcet tones, so I'm not going to stop doing it now, mate. I'm not
This
going
is
to
about
stop
9
doing it
years
now.
longer. It's about 9 years. I've been married for 10 years, so it's been about 9 years longer than my wife has. So yeah.
Yeah. You've got wings in the house, haven't you? I think you believe on one wing, she's on the other.
Yeah, well, yeah, we have, yeah, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. We have two living rooms,
Yeah,
and she has one, and I have one, uh,
yeah,
and it just works better because how many times when you're younger, do you have to kind of trade the telly?
yes,
We don't
yes.
do that. She watches shite I don't like. I watch sport she doesn't like. I'll give you an example of
Exactly.
how into sport my wife is. The other day, I'm going to see the next Test match down South Cricket Fan with a couple of the Heart and Hand guys, and I
Okay.
bought a cricket jumper. So I showed her it, and she said, "Oh, that's nice." And I joked that Martin, one of my podders, that I'm going with, I said, "Oh, Martin was going to buy it as well, just for playing cricket on his Xbox, just as a joke." And Sally went, "Oh, it's a good job he didn't buy that then, because otherwise you'd have been wearing the same jumper." And I was like, "Have you ever been to a football match?" She went, "No." I said, "It would blow your mind then the amount of people
It
that
would.
turn up in the same top." But that she once bought me for her wedding anniversary. She got me a framed signed jersey, and she presented it to me, and she went, "I got you a signed Loudrup because I know he's your favourite." And I went, "Oh my god!" I opened it up. It was Michael.
Oh,
It
you're
was a Real,
joking.
it was a Real Madrid strip.
My goodness, mate. I'd have been gutted. I would have been gutted because I was
Yeah,
just
but
yeah.
I admired the intention. I mean, it was
Yes,
a
of
nice
course.
gesture, right? She thought, "Who's his favourite footballer?" I've heard him say Loudrup. And I went, I remember saying to her, "See, did you not think Real Madrid was a bit odd?" She went, "I didn't know who he'd played for apart from Rangers." I thought, so I mean, it's cool. I've got a Michael Loudrup signed and framed jersey. So if any Real Madrid fans are watching and want to buy it, give us a shout.
I'm sure somebody would. I'm sure somebody would. But no, I appreciate it, mate. Thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight. If you could give us a wee like and subscribe, that would be magic as well. We will be back on Friday with a club live pod as usual. So until then, thank you again to David for coming on. We are Club at 22, the Rangers podcast. Cheers, everybody.